And Eye on America, Danger on the Job, a CBS News investigation of what the government is not doing to protect you. This is the CBS Evening News. Good evening, Dan Rather reporting. American cigarette makers are taking a deep breath. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled today that tobacco companies can be sued for the damage caused by smoking. More on this landmark decision from CBS News health correspondent Edie Magnus.
It is a decision Joanne Kotler has been waiting for. Her husband, George, a 45-year smoker, died of lung cancer in 1986. She wants the chance to prove the tobacco companies were responsible.
For years and years, they've been able to cover up, and I think I want to expose them for what they are, and I think they're killers.
The Supreme Court ruling clears the way for Kotler and scores of others to sue the nation's tobacco companies for damages under state personal injury laws. The court rejected arguments by the tobacco industry that federal laws requiring health warnings on cigarette packs effectively shielded them from lawsuits. 7 justices made the majority opinion. Justices Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas dissented, siding with the tobacco companies. Both are smokers. The decision is a victory for the family of Rose Cipollone, a 40-year smoker who died of lung cancer in 1984. Her lawyers have accused tobacco companies of engaging in a conspiracy to conceal the dangers of cigarettes.
I think it's going to have a sobering effect on how they're going to respond to the cigarette smoking and health issue. And if they go out and intentionally mislead people, withhold information, suppress information as they have in the past, they're going to be responsible for it.
Those activities do not concern me because the companies have not engaged in fraudulent or intentional misrepresentations.
Juries have historically been unsympathetic to the claims of smokers. Experts say whether or not any of them can ultimately win their case, today's ruling will allow them to demand documents kept secret by the tobacco companies until now, and will allow the public to find out once and for all what the tobacco companies knew about the dangers of cigarette smoking and when they knew it. Edie Magnus, CBS News, New York.
In another ruling today, the court struck down a surviving vestige of prayer in the public schools, the prayer at diploma time. More about that from CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver.
Blessed are you, source of all.
Even though classroom prayer has long been banned, prayers at public school graduations have endured.
Heavenly Father.
Not anymore. Today, the Supreme Court said graduation prayers violate the separation between church and state. It was good news to Deborah Wiseman and her family. They brought the case after her Providence, Rhode Island middle school insisted on including a prayer at graduation.
We give thanks to you, O Lord.
Basically, I don't have to just sit by and let, people who are above me or whatever take over, and that I have rights and I can protect them.
The school board said it was not trying to violate religious rights.
I don't see that an invocation and benediction is necessarily invoking religion.
But by 5-4, the Supreme Court struck down graduation prayer. Justice Anthony Kennedy saying it forced students to participate in religion.
The government must be particularly careful not to give the impression to those school children that they are either promoting religion or against religion.
The dissenters, led by Justice Antonin Scalia, accused the court of using a bulldozer to lay waste to precious American tradition.
We seem to be on a crusade to keep any vestige of religion out of the public schools, and I think that is tragic.
It was also a big loss for the Bush administration, which hoped to use this case to open the door to more religion in public schools and other government-sponsored activities. But instead, there will be even less public prayer. Rita Braver, CBS News at the Supreme Court.
News about abortion. President Bush has won his latest veto battle with Congress. His ban on spending federal money for fetal tissue research will stand. The House failed today to override the president's veto of a bill that would have lifted that ban. The Bush-Quayle re-election drive's negative campaign attacks against Ross Perot have finally gotten a response. After a week of attacks on his character, Perot called a news conference today to fire back. Eric Ingberg was there.
Ross Perot, confronted by the first firestorm of his campaign, charges that he's resorted to digging up dirt on various enemies over the years, today bitterly denounced the Bush White House for what he charged was a massive smear campaign.
There has been a 90-day effort to redefine my personality by a group called Opposition Research and Republican Party. They're generally known as the Dirty Tricks crowd.
Perot's effort to make dirty tricks an issue and answer questions about his past investigative activities follows several days of politically damaging stories in the news media, stories that are fueling a so-called weirdness issue about the Texas millionaire. The Bush White House, increasingly nervous over Perot's strong poll showings, has dropped plans to ignore him and gone to personal attacks.
Imagine Ross Perot having the IRS, the FBI, and the CIA under his control. Who would be investigated next?
Faced with this new assault on the talk show circuit, Perot fired back in kind.
Hitler's propaganda chief would be proud of what we're about to see.
As the mud fight escalated, the White House today called Perot a paranoid. This was after the president suggested that Perot was wrong to collect information on two of the Bush sons. Perot today released a 5-year-old thank you note in which Mr. Bush says he was touched by Perot's interest in the sons. And Perot says his decision to hire lawyers to look into a tax break some former Bush associates had gotten by giving ranch land to the government was innocent.
I was looking at it because twice I considered buying the ranch. Now, that's not running around with a Sherlock Holmes hat and a magnifying glass, folks.
Perot said his investigations of employees have been rare and only when money was missing. He admitted gathering information about a top Defense Department official, but said he did nothing with it but tell the FBI. He denied ever probing his own children, but once hired a detective to help one of them find a missing watch. With the charges now flying like spears, Perot tossed a new one today. Republican gumshoes, he said, have descended on Texas courthouses, demanding to see his late mother's will. Eric Engberg, CBS News, Washington.
Now, coming up later on the CBS Evening News, more of our week-long in-depth look at Ross Perot. Tonight, where Perot stands on the issues. And will Congress pull the emergency brake on the national rail strike?
Boy, this couch weighs a ton. Where does it go, Miss Lansbury?
Oh, right there, please. Wow. If I lifted that, I'd need Bufferin for the aches and pains afterwards.
You really believe in Bufferin?
I certainly do.
It's strong, huh?
Extra strength Bufferin has the strongest dosage of aspirin that you can buy. And I've discovered that the buffers don't weaken it. They just help prevent aspirin stomach upset.
Shouldn't you discover the strength of Bufferin?
And for nighttime aches, pains, and sleeplessness, try Bufferin AF Nighttime. It's aspirin-free.
Your breakfast, sir.
This new Kellogg's Frosted Bran is quite sensible. Crispy flakes with whole wheat and bran, lightly frosted for a taste that's delicious. I love it. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I love it. And new Kellogg's Frosted Bran has less sugar than you'd imagine, but the taste, it's out of
We've got to stop serving this. New Kellogg's Frosted Bran, wildly delicious, sensibly good.
American automobile makers have lost their bid to force up the cost of some Japanese imports. A federal agency ruled that minivans from Japan are not harming the U.S. auto industry. That means the government will not impose higher tariffs on the vehicles. Detroit's big three car companies had argued that the Japanese were dumping vans on the U.S. market at artificially low prices. Most of the U.S. rail system is at a standstill tonight. Management and workers are blaming each other. But correspondent Jacqueline Adams tells us that is no consolation to American businesses and travelers.
The unions say it's a lockout. The railroads say it's a strike. A federal court could decide which it is, but no matter how you define it, the nation's freight and passenger trains have stopped rolling in much of the country.
We are locked out. Conrail did lock us out.
Most unions agreed to extend contract talks for 48 hours, but the Machinists Union decided to strike against CSX Transportation, one of the largest of the nation's 40 freight railroads. Because the train tracks are so interwoven, railroads all across the country began shutting down.
The point is that we have taken the only defensive measure available to us
Most auto, grain, and chemical companies anticipated the strike and stockpiled enough parts and raw materials to get them through today. In Washington, administration officials urged lawmakers to quickly order an end to the strike to prevent a billion-dollar-a-day catastrophe.
Congress must act today. A major disruption of railroad transportation delivers a damaging blow to many sectors of the economy.
Congressional leaders, however, are unwilling to step in, at least for the next 36 to 48 hours.
The resolution to this dispute should be at the bargaining table, not at Capitol Hill.
There was one bright spot. From Boston to New York to Washington, hundreds of thousands of commuters awoke to a normal trip, because here, Amtrak and its employees are respecting the two-day extension of talks. Unless the two sides resolve their wage and job security conflicts by Friday, though, the nightmare on the freight lines could become the nightmare everywhere. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, New York.
Stay with us now for more CBS Evening News, including charges that the Pentagon closed the books too soon on Americans missing in the Vietnam War.
Fire! Fire!
Everybody needs some money sometime.
Only Western Union can get money to over 16,000 locations in minutes. Nobody else even comes close. Western Union, the fastest way to send money.
It could start in your office, in your home, over lunch. But now, wherever heartburn starts, this is where it ends. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. No ordinary antacid works like this one to put out heartburn.
Most people think paint is paint. Is paint. But then again, most people aren't professional painters. There's only one paint this good, and there's only one place you can get it. The pros know. Ask Sherwin-Williams.
All across America, more people repurchase Kenmore appliances than any other brand. In fact, over 1 out of 2 homes in the country count on Kenmore. And now at Sears Brand Central, save $75 on this large 20 cubic foot Kenmore top mount and $170 on this huge 25 cubic foot Kenmore side-by-side. They've never been priced lower. And save $40 on this matching large capacity Kenmore washer dryer pair. Only at the store you trust.
The violator, the victim, and the manhunt. Rape, the crime in the dark. 48 hours following Raven tonight.
Secretary of State Baker said today that he will now press for a quick resumption of Middle East peace talks just as soon as the newly elected Israeli government is in place. In Israel, Yitzhak Rabin followed up on his Labor Party's election win by promising today to curb, not eliminate, but curb Jewish settlements in occupied territory and accelerate negotiations for self-rule for the Palestinians. More political violence today in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. Opponents of Georgian leader Edward Shevardnadze attempted a coup. They took over the state television center, but Georgian government troops counterattacked and crushed the rebellion, at least for now. A minimum of 4 people were killed. Shevardnadze then went ahead with a trip to Russia to meet with Boris Yeltsin. In Moscow today, a special U.S. envoy looking for American POWs said his gut feeling is that there are no American prisoners in the former Soviet Union, at least not now. Former U.S. Ambassador Malcolm Toon said he expects to know for sure within about 2 weeks. In Washington, Congress heard more suggestions today that Americans missing in the Vietnam War might still be alive somewhere. Correspondent David Martin covered that story.
Navy flyer Ron Dodge after being shot down in Vietnam, alive and in captivity. But when American POWs came home in 1973, he was not among them. Today, a Senate committee investigating Americans missing in action concluded there were 244 men like Dodge who had last been seen alive but did not come home.
There is evidence that some people were absolutely left behind in that status at that time. And it is sufficient to contradict official statements made then and repeated for almost 2 decades.
In 1973, a Defense Department official, Roger Shields, said, quote, we have no indication at this moment there are any Americans alive in Vietnam. It is now clear that in its haste to get out of Vietnam, the government was not telling all it knew about Americans who may have been left behind.
Fact is that when Roger Shields turned around and said there is no evidence anybody is alive, that was not true. The last evidence we held was that people were in captivity. Correct? Some people.
Some people, yes.
Over the years, the fate of many of those 244 missing Americans has been determined. In 1981, the Vietnamese returned the remains of Ron Dodge. He had died in captivity and is buried today in Arlington National Cemetery. But for every Ron Dodge, there is a David Herdlicka, shot down over Laos, seen in captivity, but never heard from again. The hunt for these men is sometimes sidetracked by hoaxes like these photographs purporting to show American POWs.
At times, they've totally paralyzed the office because of the immense attention that they bring.
There are now 133 names on the committee's list of those last seen alive but never accounted for. And as Senator Kerry pointed out, behind every one of those names is a family and a memory. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Coming up next, Eye on America. Tonight, job safety. Safety violations in this building cost a company a small fine. They cost a worker his life.
The formula was developed by a surgeon. Now, from the makers of Preparation H, new soothing alcohol-free cleansing tissues. They clean and refresh after hemorrhoid attacks. New cleansing tissues. From the makers of doctor-recommended Preparation H.
At the first tickly itch of athlete's foot, Desenex. Killing those grungy fungi before they get cracking and burning. Go get that can now, or else don't blame Desenex.
Of 144 different import and domestic cars, only the elite make J.D. Power & Associates' top 10 models an initial quality list. That list now includes the Oldsmobile Cutlass Ciera. We believe it reflects the commitment of the people who make it and the dealers who sell it, as well as the wisdom of the people who bought it. Cutlass Ciera from Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
This castle once had 26 bathrooms.
It'd be nice if one of them still worked.
Why?
What if my diarrhea comes back?
Relax. You took my Imodium AD caplets.
Just once. I usually take the pink stuff 2 or 3 times.
Imodium AD is much better.
Imodium AD caplets are so effective, they often work in one dose, instead of dose after dose after dose like the pink stuff.
Ready to go?
Well, before the sunset?
Imodium AD for diarrhea, the choice for one-dose relief.
Ready to take that vacation? Before you do, find out what you should know about medical emergencies away from home tomorrow on CBS This Morning with Harry Smith and Paula Zahn.
Ross Perot's opponents have accused him of being vague on the issues. At his news conference today, Perot did not, to say the least, deal in detail with most issue questions. He promised to make fuller views known in good time. But the still as yet unannounced candidate for the presidency is not an unknown quantity. He has a record. Bill Lagatuda has been checking into that Perot record as part of our week-long Campaign 72 look at who is Ross Perot.
Ross Perot in Annapolis today under increasing scrutiny. Lately, there's pressure even from his supporters.
I'd like to hear him become a little bit more clear about the issues.
But contrary to the myth, Perot is on the record on a number of issues, clear on some, fuzzy on others. For example, Ross Perot on abortion.
I think this is a woman's decision. God knows what kind of demonstrations I'll have outside my office now.
He is pro-choice and thinks the federal government should pay for poor women to have abortions, but that minors should get their parents' consent. Perot has infuriated gay groups by saying he would not appoint a homosexual to his cabinet because of the confirmation process.
I don't want anybody there that will be a point of controversy with the American people. It will distract from the work to be done. See, as far as I'm concerned, what people do in their private lives is their business.
Perot is also against allowing gays in the military. On another hot topic, gun control, Perot appears to be both for and against it.
Get the guns out of the hands of the bad guys. You don't care if people collect guns. You don't care if people have guns for hunting.
Perot is against the Brady bill, for the death penalty. In fact, he's for stiffer penalties all around.
You can lay so much misery on a guy that ever holds up a 7-Eleven store with a gun or ever points a gun at anybody, so on and so forth, that even a guy drunk and on drugs and brain dead is going to be hesitant to pull his gun out.
On health care, Perot, again, doesn't like the current system. But on this, he has no plan, only plans for a plan.
Bring it to the people, get a consensus, do pilot programs. Optimize those pilot programs, know your costs, know your benefits, build a consensus that this is the answer.
The closest thing Perot has to a track record on any issue is in education. In the 1980s, he led a commission to reform the schools in Texas. No pass, no play for high school football. Merit pay hikes for teachers. Today,
I would propose that we build tiny little schools in the neighborhood that are warm, cuddly, loving places to give those children the love, affection, the attention that they did not get at home.
But social programs cost money, and Perot has not said how he would possibly fund them. It is worth noting the school reforms in Texas cost the voters a tax increase. How does Perot feel about taxes today? That story tomorrow. Bill Agatulo, CBS News, Annapolis.
Batman's arch enemy, the Penguin, reserves a room at any choice hotel, like Quality, Comfort, Clarion and Sleep, or Econolodge, Roadway and Friendship. He doesn't get to stay free. But his kids do. Kids 18 and under stay free at any of the 7 brands in the Choice Hotels family. Call 1-800-4CHOICE today.
5-day week, 8-hour day, paid sick leave, higher wages, health insurance, overtime pay, pensions, safer working conditions, paid holidays, job security, paid vacations, maternity leave. The proceeding has been brought to you by the men and women of the unions of the AFL-CIO who won these benefits at the bargaining table and set the standard for all working Americans.
I usually eat Kellogg's Raisin Bran. This is total Raisin Bran. I see no reason to change. It's delicious. Oh my goodness. Total Raisin Bran has lots of 100% of a lot of vitamins and minerals. A lot of them. And Kellogg's only has 1. Boy, that's a big difference. This
Total
is a big,
Raisin Bran,
I'm really
the
surprised.
Raisin Bran with the total difference.
I would buy Total Raisin Bran even without a coupon. And even without a toy in the box.
For a few short weeks at Red Lobster. Wait till they taste this. We're putting together lobster, crab, and shrimp.
This is going to be really special.
Ordering.
We're cooking to order sweet lobster, succulent shrimp, and Alaskan snow crab, and serving them all together. Don't miss our best combinations ever. They're just for a limited time. So hurry in tonight for lobster, crab, and shrimp.
Only at Red Lobster.
What are the chances you'll be hurt on the job? A federal agency called OSHA is supposed to look after your safety at work. But increasingly over the years, there have been accusations that OSHA is falling down on the job. Mark Phillips reports tonight's Eye on America.
Viewed from the street, 450 Lexington Avenue is a new and shining addition to Manhattan's skyline. But there's a ghost in its closet. To Craig Fitch, who helped build the skyscraper, it was a death trap. And to his wife, Dorothy, the accident is proof that the government agency that was supposed to keep the workplace safe didn't.
If OSHA had been doing what it was supposed to do, my husband would still be alive today. You know, it's that simple.
OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, oversees workplace safety, but was little help to Craig Fitch. The 39-year-old father of 2 spent 7 years in the construction trade and was doing iron work on the skyscraper's 5th floor when a steel brace snapped. He jumped back, tripped over debris, and fell 30 feet down this unprotected elevator shaft. He died within seconds. For failing to have guardrails in place, OSHA initially fined Fitch's employer, American Steel Erectors, $720.
Someone said to me, as a matter of fact, that the fine in Maine for killing a moose is larger than an OSHA penalty for killing a man. So I expected it to be, you know, minimal, but the $720 I thought was outrageous.
Across the industrial landscape, from poultry factories to petrochemical plants, when fatal or catastrophic accidents have taken place, OSHA penalties assessed are not just low, but are actually going down. Adjusted for inflation, median penalties for fatal or catastrophic accidents went from $2,093 in 1972, the first year OSHA released statistics, to $511 in 1990.
It's very dangerous, a lot of accidents, a lot of people have accidents.
On this job site, where bridge painters work without safety lines and are drenched in toxic paint, workers told us that on their previous job, one worker had fallen to his death. This went unreported to OSHA. Sources within OSHA have told CBS News that as many as half of all industrial accidents go unreported. These days, Vidal Rodriguez spends most of the day in front of the TV. He and nearly 100 other workers were exposed to toxic mercury fumes at the PIM thermometer factory in Brooklyn, a factory OSHA inspected numerous times.
He's totally disabled. He's been diagnosed as brain damage. They went in there, slapped him on the wrist, gave him a few fines, gave him some citations, and kept on giving them extensions of time. All the while, the workers were being essentially permanently damaged and injured, and OSHA wasn't protecting them, and that's what the agency was set up to do.
Despite having the authority to bring criminal charges and actually put people in jail, OSHA hardly ever exercises that power. In fact, the number of people jailed by OSHA in its more than 20 years of existence, just one. And its fines have traditionally been so low they become merely part of the cost of doing business. That's an attitude OSHA's current head says she's trying to change.
The Secretary of Labor, Lynn Martin, I think the President and myself feel very strongly about strong enforcement activities in those areas where you have serious violators of OSHA standards.
I was told that if there had been a net or guardrails, my husband would still be alive.
Not satisfied with the higher penalty OSHA ultimately leveled in her husband's case, Dorothy Fitch went to Congress. A House Justice Subcommittee now wants a special inquiry into OSHA's investigation of Craig Fitch's death. It is recommending that OSHA be able to charge employers with workplace offenses that carry prison terms up to 20 years.
Wouldn't the threat of criminal sanctions make the job of compliance easier?
Dorothy Fitch is listening carefully in the hope that her husband's death can save other lives and that OSHA's penalties in the future result in more than a slap on the wrist. This is Mark Phillips in White Plains, New York for Eye on America.
And that's part of our world tonight. Coming up on this CBS station, 48 hours. Tonight, the crime of rape. Americans have stopped whispering about it. Now they're doing something about it. 48 hours. Crime in the dark. At a special time, Marketplace, 10:30 tonight, 9:30 Central. Dan Rather. I'll see you again soon on 48 Hours.
Experience CBS News.
Ross Perot doesn't want to raise your taxes, but he doesn't rule it out.
I would say I would only consider raising taxes if all else failed.
And what about the deficit in Social Security? Ross Perot talks dollars and cents in a continuing series of special reports on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather tomorrow. This is CBS.
Next up on the TV8 News Live at 6, at last, the governor and Democrats come together on a budget compromise. It's also going to raise your taxes. We'll have details.
And the governor has just announced a special legislative session will convene tomorrow morning. I'm Jill Lingwall. I'll have late details from the State House. Also tonight, a child sex abuse suspect pleads guilty. We'll have an update. And Dana Carden takes us to summer camp for the MDA kids.
We'll also see Connie tap dancing around the forecast and Heidi with all the sports. TV8 News is next.
Every time the Grand Prix comes to town, you dream about being a race car driver. But just because you're not a race car driver doesn't mean you can't have fun while you're driving. That's why your Ford dealers are having their Grand Prix of savings with the best deals of the year, like the top Ford F-150 Super Cab with Grand Prix savings of $2,000. And that's loaded with AM/FM stereo, air conditioning, 5-speed transmission, and more. But with these savings, they're really moving fast. So stop dreaming and have some fun. The starting line is at your Ford dealer.
Think about who you'll be driving around over the next, say, 7 days. That's how long your dealer said it would take before he could fix your brakes. At Midas, we think that's exactly 7 days too long. Because our experts can fix them right the very same day you bring in your car. And that's something to think about today. Midas, because your brakes can't wait.
Thank you for watching KCCI, TV8 in Des Moines. And now from TV8, Iowa's news leader, Paul Rhodes, Kevin Koenig, Connie McBurney with weather, and Heidi Soliday.